when you think about this construct that we're in called the government, for instance, the government's just an agreement. It's an agreement. Institutions are agreements. Governments are agreements. This whole social structure is an agreement. It's a whole bunch of individuals that have collectively gotten together and said, yeah, we're going to play this game. We're the ones that give it power. We're the ones that keep lending to it. We're so indoctrinated into this industrialized society. Our illusion that it gives us safety is just an illusion. And yet, I enjoy some of these social constructs as well. Breaking free from the material world is understanding that, one, we are sovereign, and two, we're powerful. So when we understand that we're powerful, we can command the material world. We're no longer commanded by it. There is nothing outside of you that is more powerful than you. So when we look at these structures, these systems that we have built that are just agreements that we agree to, be aware of what game you're choosing to play. Hello, and thanks for joining me today. If you so choose, grab yourself a cup of tea. I've got mine. Or some water or a drink or nothing. It's up to you. Be aware of your awareness. Be mindful of your mindfulness and allow yourself to just be present. I was talking to a friend of mine and we were talking about this matrix that we live in. And I was sharing with him the story about this chap that when I was scrolling through one of the social media channels, as we do, and there was this chap who was what we call a sovereign, and he was in his garden, he was pottering around, and he was just a very simple man, very lovely man. And he was just telling us the story that he had no birth certificate. He's not part of this matrix. He grows his own food. He lives off the land. He's completely in a sovereign state of beingness. And there was a few things that popped up for me when I was listening to that. And one of them was over the whole COVID thing, I'm sure I wasn't the only one, but there was just this wish in me to just head for the hills and just live off the land and live in the beautiful acreage somewhere and grow my own food and just get out of this craziness that everybody was experiencing, because the truth is nature wasn't sharing the same vibration. If you go out into nature, there's nothing different. There's nothing going on. It's all a construct of our social situation. Anyway, that was one of the things that just reminded me of that beautiful yearning to go back to a simple life. But the other thing that came up for me, which was really interesting, was the fear of unplugging, the fear of unplugging from this matrix, this institutionalized collective agreement that we have. And I thought I might investigate that, because it really goes with the theme. I've been really focusing on the energy of the solar center, the solar plexus, and how that works with our manifestation, because the solar center, which is in that solar plexus center, has a lot to do with our will. It has to do with our ego, our identity, and all of those kind of consciousness levels. So it's how we integrate to the outside world. And it can be a huge obstacle to manifesting, because we have to be aware of the identity that we give power to. And when we're identified to being poor, or a victim, or when we identify to being somehow a martyr, maybe, or we identify with the world doesn't support me, even just being a hard worker, that was one of the things in my family that was really celebrated and revered. And anyone, I mean, you could be anything. You could be a thief. You could be you could have affairs on your husband, or actually no, husbands could have affairs on their wives in my family, but women were not allowed to. But you couldn't be lazy. And laziness was considered in my family as one of the worst crimes that you could possibly commit. And so we develop this ego center, this identity around that, and it's very deeply unconscious. And this is how we integrate to the outside world with that. We connect and we find evidence of that being good, bad, or indifferent. So we'll find people to judge who are lazy. We'll find people that we admire who are not lazy, because that's just a very simple identification. You might have many different identifications. We identify with our value systems, loyalty, freedom, trust. However, we may identify with freedom and sovereignty and all of those kind of things. But if there is a wound around that, we don't necessarily do the actions, or we don't necessarily go in the pathway that gives us that. So freedom and sovereignty is one of the things that are very high in my value. I have a rebellious nature somewhere inside as well. Certainly my teenager was extremely rebellious. However, when I bump into these things within myself, like that fear of sovereignty, that fear of letting go of this secure environment that I think is secure, it's just an illusion. When you think about this construct that we're in called society, and all its many different levels and facets. Let's take the government, for instance. And the government's just an agreement. It's or the justice system even. That's all part of it. It's an agreement. It's a whole bunch of individuals that have collectively gotten together and said, yeah, we're going to play this game. It's nothing different to what we may have experienced in the playground at school. There's a bunch of kids out in the playground that say, this part of the playground is ours and you're not allowed to play here, and you've got to do this task to actually even be allowed to be part of our group. It's nothing different to that. And here's the clincher. We're the ones that give it power. We're the ones that keep lending to it. And we're so indoctrinated, and our school system is something that indoctrinates us into this industrialized factory kind of, the word will come to me in a minute, but we're basically being conditioned to work in an industrialized society. So we start out by being these beautiful, free, energetic, wild beings, and then we get sat down in a school, told what we need to learn, shamed if we didn't know certain things or we didn't align with certain things. And I'm sure that schooling systems are changing, and as we're becoming more conscious and growing as a collective, they're the things that are changing too. I've heard some very promising things. However, the structure is still sit, be still, obey, do what I say, and you will become something that is useful to this society, to this factory line, and you become a factory line worker where you're able to sit for hours in a day doing a particular task that often is meaningless to some degree. I mean, let's look at doing your books and accountancy, right? Sorry to all the accountants out there and all the bookkeepers, and it's one of my pet hates sitting there and doing my books, trust me. But I don't think as a God in flesh that we're here to count numbers. I think we're here to do a lot more than that. I think we're more than this industrial line that we've been handed to. So anyway, this system is big, and society in its effort to solve certain problems has created this thing that we call security. And security is nothing. The more secure a thing, the more it's a prison. So that's the duality of it. That's the polarity of it, is that, whenever we're looking for security, we're basically creating a prison for ourselves at the same time. So to me, sovereignty is a way to play in matter and to be able to utilize matter for whatever we desire. However, when I see this man who is truly sovereign, who isn't part of this system, I notice the fear in me that comes up, that goes, oh, how does he defend himself? How does he protect himself? All of these thoughts came up, which is really easy. And then I think, well, this system doesn't defend or protect me. I live in a house, I pay rent, I buy my food in all sorts of different places. Oftentimes I'll go to markets or directly to farmers. What's the difference? What's the difference in this construct? And is it really as safe as what we think it is? So institutions are agreements, governments are agreements, this whole social structure is an agreement, and our illusion that it gives us safety is just an illusion, because, at the times when we may have been threatened in the past, in this social structure, we found that some of the largest threats were the ones that were in the institutions themselves, the ones that we have given our authority over to. So that being said, it's that journey going inwards and looking at where our own sovereignty is, the idea. I mean, I still have some inkling and some desire within me that says, gee, it would be nice to go out and live on acreage, grow your own food, be free of these social constructs. And yet, I enjoy some of these social constructs as well. So it's just an interesting place to ponder, because when we start to look and dig down deep into our astrology and into our blueprint and into what are we actually here to do, what have we as a soul signed up for? What have we as a soul come to fulfill? And one of the things, when clients come to me and they basically are, feel lost, or they feel like they're not on the right path, or they're confused about their position. One of the things that I often say to them is, let's start from where you are. You're in this space because this is your deepest truth. So your deepest truth, so if I look at me, my deepest truth is sitting here, filming a podcast, talking to a collective that may or may not be interested in what I have to say, talking about my experiences about reality. And my reality is working in clinic, working with people, dissecting the metaphysics of life. And it's a pretty bloody good life. Like, I really enjoy that, because that's, when I look at my own astrology, that's what I'm here to do. I'm here to live in a mindful way. Mindfulness is part of my life's work. If you go into, if anyone's ever heard of Gene Keys, that's genekeys.com is a great website. You can go and get your free chart done there. I'm not affiliated with them anyway, but I use that body of knowledge a lot, because it's Gene Keys and Human Design was introduced to me by a friend of mine back in, I think it was 2004 or thereabouts, when the Venus transit came over at that time. And that was another collective huge shift that was happening. Like, people's marriages were ending left, right, and center. My marriage ended that year as well. And what Venus did at that time, as it was transiting, it made clear to us the relationships that were of value and the relationships that were not of value. So, so 2004, I got introduced to Human Design, and we even hosted a Venus sequence course at that time, to start to unravel our core relationship wounds and start to understand how we function in a relationship. And that was fascinating. And so anybody that is interested in human design, you can go and get your chart done. I mean, there's tons of websites. You can just Google human design and you'll get millions of websites up there. But if you go to Jovian Archives, JOVIAN archives.com, I might see if we can put the link in one of the descriptions down below. And you can go and get your chart done. If you know your birth date, birth time, you can get your own chart done. And it's a really interesting journey to start to contemplate our energy field and who we are and what we've actually come to do. more in an essential way, rather than, oh, you're here to be a lawyer, or you're here to be a ballerina, or whatever. They're just things that we do whilst we're doing the thing that we're here to do. So for me, my human design is a projector. And as a projector, I'm what they call a potential guide on the planet. So hence, I set up my life in a way that I can be a guide, a potential guide for people that may or may not desire to hear what I have to say. So, so that's the thing that I do with my energy field, no matter what I'm doing. I know many different projectors. One of my daughters is a projector, and she works as a project manager for a business. And she's, again, people take her advice, which is really interesting. I know many hairdressers that are projectors as well, because they set themselves up in those particular professions. So a profession isn't necessarily what we're here to do. It's what we do whilst we're doing the thing we're here to do. So we will have this drive in us, and I can see that for me, living out on land somewhere and being a totally sovereign being is so appealing. I can't tell you. However, I'm also aware that the thing that came up for me when I wanted to do that was actually because I wanted to hide. I wanted to get away from the madness. I wanted to not be in the chaos, and I'm still sitting here. My bum is on this chair, smack bang in the middle of suburbia. So obviously I'm doing the thing that I'm here to do. And, that brings me to the understanding of, our body holds our deepest truth. So this is why it's really important to understand physically where we are. So our physicality gives us the understanding of our deepest truth. So whatever we physically have in our environment, whatever we physically, where our body is physically, gives a sense of deeper truth. And if you know a little bit about your own intuition, and they're the things that I really want to unpack in future podcasts and some of my courses that I'm going to be putting up on YouTube, is how to connect with our intuitive self, how to connect with our intuition. I remember a friend of mine ringing me when this whole COVID thing busted wide open, and everybody was a little bit of a panic about it, not knowing, is it real? Is it not real? Are we being lied to? Is there really truly some deadly thing coming through and killing people? And a friend of mine rang me and said, what's your take on this? And I said, well, my body isn't running for the hills. And if my body's not running for the hills, it must mean that this is going to be okay. And it was. Mentally, I wanted to run for the hills. Mentally, I wanted to get out of this place. But the body was completely at ease where I was. So yeah, that understanding that our body and our innate intelligence, if we choose to tune into it, gives us an understanding of who we are. And I can imagine the millions of questions for people that suffer with anxiety issues and are, in a state of anxiety, and they feel like they can't trust their body, or they feel like they're getting all the wrong signals. Something to remember around that is that, and again, you may be in a restaurant and you may feel anxiety. However, you're in a restaurant. That's where your body is. Your body's sitting on the seat. So it's a case of starting to understand where the anxiety is coming from. A lot of times anxiety isn't even ours. We're triggered. I remember when I used to have panic attacks many years ago, and I went down that whole anxiety road and having full-blown panic attacks, which for me, at the end of the day, and what I worked out, it was mentally feeling trapped where I was. So on one side, I was in a marriage that I didn't want to be in, but I was in the marriage towards the end. In the beginning, I was there for all the right reasons, but towards the end, I was in this marriage feeling trapped, and the attachments and the fear and the need for security and the disbelief in my own self and all of those things that I had to unpack so that I could actually move on. My panic was coming from the feelings of being trapped, and I was only trapped by my own volition. I was only trapped by my own survival systems, which is what was underneath my panic attacks. And I urge people to actually delve deep into what their panic is about, because it can manifest in all sorts of ways. I know for me, I was terrified of crossing a road. Not crossing a road, sorry, crossing a bridge. I was terrified of crossing a bridge. So metaphysically, I was terrified of crossing a bridge, crossing a bridge to get to the other side. So that's what it meant metaphysically. I would wake up in the middle of the night, in the startle. I'd get startled and think that, that the world was going to get hit by a meteor or something like that, which was the end of the world. So I was terrified by the end of the world. So when we start to metaphysically look at all those aspects of our life, and from a metaphorical and metaphysical level, it was true. I was terrified to step out of the world as I knew it, to cross that bridge, to get to the other side, because I didn't trust the bridge. I didn't trust myself enough at that time to know that I had the skills, the strength, the power to get to the other side, and that my structure that was holding me was powerful enough. And I think that then weaves us back to our sovereignty. And and I mean, I can only speak for myself. And have my cup of tea. I can only speak for myself when I say that, when I meditate on why I don't feel sovereign, where I feel I get myself trapped in this world, and the fears come up, and it will often be, the base chakra kind of wounds, which are fear of survival, fear of not having enough money, fear of just that physical survival stuff. And when we work through that, because one of the things that's really important to remember is that there's only a finite number of fears. It's only finite. So once you work through the basic fears, you're free to a large extent. You can raise up out of the base chakra, out of your karma, out of those areas where you're just worried about your body and survival, and you're basically surviving, you're not thriving. And once you master those fears and you're able to build the bridge to get to the other sides, get to other worlds, to get to other dimensions. And when I talk about other dimensions, I mean other realities, like that sovereign man who was, growing his own veggies, living the life that he desired, and my sun sign is a Taurus. So with my sun sign, I have certain attributes about me that likes the luxuries of life. I'm very much Venus related. I like to have stuff and I like to live in luxury. To me, money is only as important as what it can provide the lifestyle for me. And so, when I look at letting go of certain things, there's definitely attachments to them, which is another place to work through. And breaking free from the material world is understanding that, one, we are sovereign, and two, we're powerful. So when we understand that we're powerful, we can command the material world. We're no longer commanded by it. So that's the different perspective. There is nothing. I mean, David Hawkins says this, and I love this saying, and I use it often. There is nothing outside of you that is more powerful than you. So when we look at these structures, these systems that we have built that are just agreements that we agree to, just like, let's say, the justice system, that's a big one that's being thrown up in the air at the moment, particularly on the world globe, on the World Forum, and that there's certain structures around this justice system that aren't really based on justice. And if you have heard any things about becoming sovereign, getting out of letting go of citizenships and things like that, I mean, that's another fascinating pathway. And I think if it terrifies you and if it frightens you, you should go down that path, because that's the path of the hero. That's the hero's journey. In ancient mythology, and I've got on my website, I've got a blog that I write about fear and the hero's journey, and then there's also another one that's a process on how to process fear. Really useful. It's super useful because, again, finite number of fears. So we've got this hero's journey, and I know from experience that if I go down the path that terrifies me rather than the path that just gives me pleasure, don't get me wrong, I love pleasure, I'm all for pleasure, woohoo, have party, have fun, I'm always having fun. But if there is something fearful in my environment, I don't want that to take any of my energy. I don't want that to have any real estate value in my field. So I go down there and and confront it. Because, when we go back to that mythological tale of the hero's journey, there's an old myth, a story that says that the knights of the Round Table, their quest was to go out and find the Holy Grail. And the Holy Grail is this mythological symbol of our purest and highest consciousness. And anyway, every single one of those nights where they started their journey was at the edge of this forest, and every single one of them started at the place that most terrified them, that most frightened them. And it was only by going through that they would have any chance of actually retrieving the Holy Grail. And it's the same for us, it's that place of, if you go and you properly deal with your fear, and dealing with fear is not pushing it down, being positive about it, going, no, it'll be fine. It's actually going into it and going, what is this? It's really investigating it like you'd investigate a pain. If you imagine you're a child and, you've seen a pen for the first time, a child doesn't go, oh, it's fine, it'll be okay, and throws it away. It goes, what is this? It sees that it's got this thing and it's got that thing. It tastes it, it feels it, it sucks on it, it writes on walls with it. It actually really investigates it. So if we are to investigate our own fears and work out what they are, we eventually start to notice that they're an illusion. Every single one of them is an illusion. So, when you feel stuck in this construct of industrialized, societal, imprisoned safety net, and you feel restricted in that, because you will always feel restricted in that. We all feel restricted with that. And some people even complain about the government as if the government is some real authority in their lives. And when you think about it, the government is just a bunch of people that have all agreed. And I don't know, I'm probably speaking out of school there, but I've not met many who actually go, oh my God, I love going to that place. It just thrills me. I have met a few, but I can imagine that being in that restrictive place doesn't give them the ability to shine their full light either. So be aware of what game you're choosing to play, because the laws of karma exceed and supersede the laws of man. And, these people that play in these fields of feeling like they're protected by these structures, feeling like they're above the law in some way, and using that power to hurt people, to falsely accuse people, to damage people, to shut people down, to stop people from shining. These institutions and these games that have been built on fabricated compliance by people that are unconscious to the fact that they're lending their power to something that they truly actually don't even agree with. But when you play that game and it, feeling like you've got to do something that isn't your real truth, that bumps up against your truth, being forced to do something, like those guys that give tickets to, people that are homeless and they're living in their car, and then these pardon my judgment, go and give these people tickets and say, well, you got to pay that. Like, is there any place inside of that person that goes, this doesn't feel correct? What game am I playing? Who am I choosing to be? Because when we don't agree with something, it's different if you agree with it. Like, some people are totally in the game. They are 100% in. They love it. It is their truth. And you know what? Go for it. However, the ones where it conflicts in them, the ones that if I can speak to the person that's not happy about it but feels trapped, you're trapped by your own fear, and you're trapped by your own mind. And the fear seems real because there is a part of you that needs to die for you to get out of that, and that's why it's going to feel terrifying. But there is a law that is greater than any man's law that can ever be put out, and that is the law of karma. Doesn't mean to say that you're going to get punished. There is no external authority that punishes us. That's a construct of society. But it's the law of karma is that every action has its own outcome. So if you choose to harm another and hide behind what you perceive as a structure, and you know that you are harming another, you're not going to get away with that. That's impossible. It doesn't work like that. This matrix that we're in has some immutable laws that cannot be changed, no matter how much we wish them to be. The game's designed like that. It's like the law of nature. We just don't know some of the laws of nature, and so therefore we can be surprised that there is a lot more that we can do with the natural laws than what we've been led to believe. So if you are stuck in an institution and feeling like you are doing things that are going against your deepest truth, be aware that, I think that is the worst place of suffering. Is, to me, it's more frightening than just jumping out and going, oh, well, I'm just gonna, wing it out here. And so the law of karma, we do have these divine laws that our soul aligns with. So eventually there comes a point when the soul has had enough of playing a game that's not in alignment, that your soul will call you out. And that's when you see people's life change, when things just crumble, it's usually, it looks terrifying, but it's usually an enormous blessing, because the soul has gone, enough, you can't play this game anymore, you got to get out. Anyway, I just wonder if any of this resonates with you guys. It's just something that I've been pondering today. And so if you haven't already subscribed, please subscribe to my channels, because believe it or not, it gives me the energy then to, or the acknowledgement to know that, oh, I am actually speaking to people that want to hear what I have to say. So if you are interested in me putting out more content and putting some courses into the world that I will be putting up for free on YouTube, which I'm super excited about, particularly helping people to work through the solar center, which is very, very powerful for manifestation. So subscribe, share, hit the like buttons, do all the stuff that we know what to do. if you want. If you don't, do what you feel like. But if you're interested, awesome. Come back and get notified for my next podcast. I love you all. I really do. And I wish you all the very best. And I really wish you sovereignty. And I wish you happiness and joy and the liberation of this world of matter, so that you can start to understand who you are and you're not trapped in matter. Matter is here for you to play with. It's not the other way around. You're not here to totally be a prisoner in this. It's just that somehow, from time to time we all forget who we are. We all forget what we've come for. I've got a daily affirmation that if you go on my website, you can sign up for daily affirmations, which just are a reminder to remember who you are. It's just a nice reminder every morning, comes out at 5 o'clock every morning, that just puts you into a state of consciousness where you go, oh, yes, I remember who I am. Yes, that's me. Okay, cool. All right. With that said, enjoy the rest of your day, evening, whatever, and love you all. Many blessings, and see you next time.